Peace, family. This is your brother Willie Muhammad, and thank you once again for tuning in to another broadcast of Class is in Session. We're here on WBOK where it is real talk for real time, so let your family and friends know that they can tune in right now. They can go online at WBOK1230am.com and tune in to hear us if they're outside of the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. We thank each and every one of you all who have taken the time to tune in every week, and we pray that you all enjoyed the last week's show when we talked about this current concept, the continued controversy regarding our brother Colin Kaepernick's protest. So I hope that you all enjoyed it, and today we have another jam-packed show, an informative show, and I think the subject of today and our guest is going to share some information that can really we can use here in the city of New Orleans. But before we get into the interview with our sister, I want to make an announcement and invite all of those who are listening to come out on next Sunday, which is October the 15th, 2017, and you can come out to our mosque located at 4201 Diamond Road, New Orleans, Louisiana, right in eastern New Orleans. All you have to do is take the Diamond exit, and you drive on down and you'll see our building sitting on the corner. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is going to be speaking, and his title of his lecture is Separation or Death, and the program begins at 1 p.m. And the minister is sharing giving his annual address during the Holy Day of Atonement, which is to commemorate the historic Million Man March. And he has a lot to say, and I know what he shares is going to be timely, and there's something for all of those who hear what he has to say. And while we're talking about the Holy Day of Atonement, the whole idea came about during the historic Million Man March. And I know from time to time I run into a couple of people online mostly, and they talk about, well, what did the Million Man March do? What were the benefits? And it's just so interesting that there was an interview recently done with the very popular hip-hop morning talk show or radio show with our family, Charlemagne, DJ Envy, and Angela Yee, which is it's called The Breakfast Club. And they interviewed one of my favorite hip-hop artists, Method Man, from the group called Wu-Tang Clan. And in the interview, they started talking about the crime and the violence in New York, in a specific part of New York. And I want to play for you the clip so you can hear what Method Man attributed the reduction in violence to during that time. So we'll play you that audio, and then we'll get right into our interview. So check out this audio.
On 42nd Street, you didn't go. My mom would. You wanted to go. All the kids and teens wanted to go, but your moms and pops did not want you to go on 42nd Street.
So Giuliani did a good job cleaning it up, right?
Well, I don't think Julie. Well, yeah.
He cleaned that up.
Yeah.
It used to be scary to be over there.
Yeah, it looked
used to
like
be a
now.
little scary.
It was not a tourist spot.
But as far as crime and stuff like that in New York, and Giuliani took a lot of credit for that. I think a lot of that had to do with the Million Man March and us being consciously aware of what we were doing to each other and stuff. And everybody took a chill and sat back and thought about things for a minute, you know?
Salute to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Always.
Okay, and we're back. Powerful, right? So if you want to see the full interview, of course, you can go online. But come out and hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on next Sunday, October the 15th, 2017, at 4201 Diamond Road, and the program begins at 1 p.m. So I said that we have a special guest with us today, and our sister is from the place called, as some people refer to as the Windy City. And you know anything, you know what that is. That's Chicago, Illinois. Somebody recently corrected me how I pronounce Illinois. So, sister, if I'm not saying it right, please let me know. And our sister is doing a great work, and I had the opportunity to be interviewed by her for a project that she's working on, and she's going to talk about today. So help me out, Sister TeQuila Shabazz, right?
Yes, sir. TeQuila Shabazz. And you said Illinois just fine.
You know, here in New Orleans, some people accuse us of having our own language. We'll chew a word up and chop it up and give it a little twist. I'm glad that
I like that.
You like that?
I do.
So, that's good. That's good. So our dear family, our who are listening, our sister is here, and she's spearheading, of course, with others who I know who's working with her, a very unique project. And before we get into that unique project that she's going to discuss, I want her to share with the listening audience just who she is and tell us about the work you do, sister, in Chicago.
Absolutely. Thank you first for having me on the show, Brother Muhammad. I'm so happy to be a part of today's discussion. As you mentioned, my name is TeQuila Shabazz, and I am here in Chicago, headquartered in Chicago. I run a social enterprise. I'm a social entrepreneur, and the name of the business is The Bridge Embassy for Black America. Most people reference it as just Bridge, BRIJ, which is an acronym for Building Relationships and Justice. And our work is very simple. We're a collective, a growing collective, probably about 700 to 7,500 people now that are part of it. They're members. We call them citizens. And we've all taken a collective pledge to eradicate poverty and build wealth in Black America. And we do that by being extremely intentional and strategic with the way that we redistribute our capital. And if you notice, I did not say dollar, I said capital. And that, because that expands the idea of economics just being about money. It's about our human capital, our social capital, our natural capital, our spiritual capital, etc. So this is, in short, that's the way we're using our time, the way we're using our resources, our skills, in addition to our money. It's also asking ourselves not only where are we shopping, which we hear a lot of today, but where are we sending our children to school? Who are we working for? Who are the people around us? So it pushes this idea of economics beyond, again, just the dollar. And we just really practice that. Our creed or our motto is what I call the AAA motto, which is A, we are driving awareness of the people and places that are doing the work. We have so many distractions in this Build Black movement or this Black empowerment movement, whatever name we want to give it. I call it the Build Black movement. We drive awareness of the people and places that are doing the exceptional work. The second A is accountability, and that means that I've created a support group. Again, you heard me use the word collective, so a support group to keep us on path with our collective pledge, making sure that we are shopping at different places and being able to exchange conversation that discuss our challenges, so giving us a place to vent without breaking down our businesses, our organizations and institutions in a public space, and really working collectively to come up with sessions. We do something here in Chicago every month called First Fridays, and it's a meet up and build session where people within the collective can come together and actually make face-to-face contact with one another, and we do breakout sessions. So yesterday we had a First Friday session, and as we close out this year, we have put together a collective pledge and a 10-point agenda and our strategy for approaching that. Before that, we were looking at lost towns. We were talking about some of the top distractions this year and how we can keep people on focus. So we really address a lot of different issues in our community. And the last A is action, right? So, I mean, you can talk about a lot of stuff and have all the knowledge in the world and be aware, but it is absolutely nothing without application. So those three things we really push: awareness, accountability, and action. For those who have become exposed to our work on a larger scale outside of Chicago, we have a group on Facebook, which is very, very popular. It's called BEBA, BEBA, and that just is the Be Black Academy. That's what it's short for. And in this group, individuals, really push this accountability piece of our creed by reporting in. That's what I call it. They report the dollars that they've spent by sharing receipts. They'll take a picture of a receipt and say, hey, I just went to Sip and Savor in Hyde Park. I'm naming Chicago communities in Hyde Park, and it was so delicious, and I spent $4.50. So we have people reporting with their receipts, the Black-owned businesses that they're shopping at, and then also reporting their time, where they are giving of themselves. So it could be, hey, I spent 4 hours with the local organizing committee here, or, whatever organization that they're a part of. And it could be as simple as, hey, I help my neighbors, and they accompany these posts with pictures and, any kind of stamp that shows that they were actually there. So to date, we have done $1.4 million back into Black-owned businesses and over 7,500 hours, into our communities, direct service. So again, I really try to move this conversation of building Black beyond just consumerism, because that's what we're saying when we say buy Black. We're really in a consumer state of mind to really move us more into a more holistic approach to economics, and that is the primary work of Bridge. Wow,
so that is powerful, and I'm definitely going to go on Facebook and make sure I join that group, BEBA, right? BEBA.
Yes.
And I love the 3 A's: awareness, accountability, especially the last one, action.
That's right.
And,
that's right.
You mentioned one thing, and there's another question that came to mind while you were talking. What started, how did you begin, in this work that you just talked about? And this is a two-part question. And you mentioned that there are some distractions. What are those distractions? So what started you in this work, and what are those distractions that you talked about?
Okay, so what started me in this work, I have to say that in high school, back in the 90s, in high school, the year that Malcolm X came out, right? That is what kind of was the first, honestly, my first level of awareness with my Blackness, on a conscious level, really being conscious, not background music. Hip-hop was always around, but I was one of those children who came up in a home where there was no discussion about Blackness. There was no talk about what that even meant for real. So, you could put me in front of Roots, like my mom was that person. Roots came out in 1977, same year that I was born. And, as a child, our Black History Month thing was watch Roots. But I was a child that's is this real? Is it, is it fake? There was no context. There was no conversation. So by the time I hit high school, I think maybe my freshman, sophomore year, whatever year Malcolm X came out, it really opened my eyes, and it made me want to learn more about the Nation of Islam. Okay, so I started to do a lot of work, research on the Nation of Islam, and of course, came across the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings, and that really just opened my eyes to a whole other world that I didn't see existing around me. I saw poverty. I saw struggle. I saw lots of sacrifice. My mom working 2 and 3 jobs. My father getting caught up in the, crack and cocaine. And, that was my experience with Blackness. So when I saw this, I started digging further, and that's when I found out about a Marcus Garvey or an Amos Wilson or an Ida B. Wells. It just got deeper and deeper, and I felt like a child, in a sense, who had been lied to all her life, about who her parents were. So I continued on that journey, and I was a teen mom. But what I did was I made a covenant and said, when my daughter is off and she's well cared for, I am going to come back into the community and do what it is that I need to do on a full-time basis. Because before, I would volunteer as a mentor, as a tutor, and insert myself any way that I can. And, of course, making sure that my own child had the knowledge that I did not have growing up, a sense of identity as it surrounds her Blackness. So that was my early my earliest contributions, but my daughter graduated from high school in 2012, had a full ride to college, and as soon as she did that, I resigned from a major media company, being paid very well. I was making six figures, working for Chicago Tribune, or the Tribune Media Group, and anybody who knows us, Chicago Tribune is the equivalent of the New York Times here, or any major paper. So I was working for them, making very good money, flying all across the country. And then when she went off, I quit. I said, okay, it's time to come out and do this work. And so I spent a year, really going out into the community, building relationships, seeing what was missing, but also, experiencing very close losses due to the violence here in the city. So I put together a project in 2012, right after Trayvon Martin. I put together a project here called the SD2R Project. And I also am a huge hip-hop fan. So I heard you mention Wu-Tang and Method, Yeah. I'm a huge hip-hop fan and a retired MC here, award-winning, by the way. Yes, I am a lyricist, but I just have a different stage now. All right. But so I put together this project and called together over 50 artists and just regular everyday folk to come together to create what's called the pop-up artist spots in 6 of the most dangerous communities here in Chicago, and we would do so in the most dangerous times of the day and after hours when everything was closed down, and we noticed that the violence typically peaked during those hours. So we would use art as therapy to help young children and teens heal from trauma and also deal with anger. So, I mean, they learned how, the art of beat making and DJing, how to, use their visual artist experience to create remix, I should say, old gym shoes and things like that. So I saw that it was a great, it was extremely great, but it was only 6 weeks long, which I don't like because our young people, one of the things that are lacking is this consistency. So what I did was I'm like, okay, what do I do now? What did I find? And what I found is that there are a lot of organizations and different initiatives that people do right out of their home or right there in the community with whatever resources they have that people did not know about. So I wanted to drive awareness of those people. I knew that they were lacking on funds or just people coming to support and volunteerism. So I did a huge drive and getting people in the door of these different spaces. One of the ways that we did that was I produced and directed over 30 short films covering local heroes here, local Black heroes here that are doing extraordinary work, right? And so that's how it started. And then from there, it just grew. And, the economics piece is a piece that you can't not discuss. It's at the core of everything. It's kind of like that binding piece, right? So, the following just grew from there. The work never stopped, and here we are today. So I got into this work because it's my life. You know what I mean? It's my experience, everything that I've known, and now that I've taken care of raising my child, and it's just me, I am pretty much married to the movement.
Wow. That's powerful. You said so much. But before we go to the break, can you quickly mention the distractions, because I think that's important for people to know here as well.
Yeah, so when we talk about distractions, we can one of the exercises that we did is we listed out 40 different highlights in the news or things that people were talking about in social media, from West to Kim Kardashian to even, asking the question is what's going on with Kaepernick? Is that worthy of discussion or distraction? This question that we should always keep at the top of our head, because unfortunately, we are easily distracted. We're very reactionary. We get upset about every little thing. For example, the Pepsi commercial that came out earlier this year where they had one of the Kardashians and she came out and it was a huge protest and all of that. Oh, we wanted to shut them down. It's like, what? Are we really? I mean, they just had the wrong people at the table, but their intention was probably good, right? Like we could probably say that their intention was good. They just are uninformed and uneducated, right? But I really think the intention was good. But we went on for days talking about this. We went on for days about whether Cardi B's song, if you listening to that or if you're not, and the D challenge and the P challenge and who did that. Like we're talking about all of this, but guess what? Just last night when I came home from my first Friday building with people, I got news that my godnephew was killed, shot 10 times in his car. You understand? So y'all sitting up here talking about this, and it's in this city of Chicago, when every single day we wake up to another young person, right? Another young person being killed, activists being killed, elders being killed, and you got the nerves to talk to me about girls' trip? So that's what I mean by we're distracted, and these distractions are keeping illusions alive. They're self-medicating. It's this whole thing about why does everything have to be so serious? Because we live in a serious time, So that just to touch on distraction, because I know you need to take a break. That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah, that. You summed it up very well, sister. And just like you said, you so many key points you hit on. One, the importance of us having discussions and organizing and mobilizing around economic development. Because a lot of times I feel that when we talk about building and all of this other stuff, if we are not including a real, authentic, and real discussion and planning about economics, then it's mystery God teaching, because you need economics. And what you said in regards to us being distracted. So you hit the nail on its head. So our listening audience, I know they're really appreciating what you are saying. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to our first break. And this is Brother Willie Muhammad, and this is Classes in Session for our listeners. And we'll be back with our sister TeQuila Shabazz, and we're going to ask her another question about Chicago. Then we'll get into her work with the Neil Green Book, and you'll find out more about that. So this is your Brother Willie Muhammad. Stay tuned, and we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. Peace. Here we go. All right, so we're back, brothers and sisters. This is your Brother Willie Muhammad, and we have with us today Sister TeQuila Shabazz. She's from Chicago, and if you've been listening, our sister is involved with a lot of stuff that's meaningful to our community, and I can tell from just her words and what she shared that she's just not a person that's saying one thing and not doing it. Especially, I like how she talked about the triple A's: awareness, accountability, and action. So that's definitely needed. You heard us speak about the distractions that oftentimes sidetrack us as a black people, and she hit on some points. So, and also let us extend the condolences and prayers to you and your family for your godson, you said. And since you mentioned that the violence from being there, living in Chicago, from your experience and from your view, what do you see as the causes and the impacts, and what could those outside of the city of Chicago do to help those in Chicago who are working to combat the violence?
Absolutely, and that's a really great question. I mean, because people here, first of all, never come here saying Chirac, okay?
Definitely.
We take great offense to that. And if anybody has anything labeling saying Chirac, they're kind of an outsider, because we definitely don't like that term. But let me just go back a little bit to the 90s when I was in high school. I'm not sure how old you are, Brother Willie, but I'm assuming maybe we around the same age. But when you younger? You younger than me?
No, same age. I graduated. Yeah, no.
Okay, so if you go back to the 90s here in Chicago, the violence was actually double that. The murder rate was double that of what we see today. So what they did then is exactly what they need to do now, or what we need to do, because I'm all about self-sufficiency, right? That's the only way that we're going to sustain anything. Anytime you're responsible for someone feeding you, what happens when they decide they're not going to show up with dinner that night? You're going to go hungry, right? So what we are missing, it was the same thing then, same thing now, is opportunities for our young people. So in the 90s, and anyone, matter of fact, I think it was 1992 or 93, Minister Farrakhan was part of the this conversation and with the National Black Caucus, the National Democratic, right? And he was talking about the violence and things that were happening here in Chicago. And you can play that same tape now, or that same video now, and nothing has changed. It sounds as if it is happening today, and that's over 20 years old. So what we're lacking is opportunities. One of the things that they did in the 90s was they started to put in the After School Matters program, so these work programs during the summer as well as after school to keep youth busy. We saw more recreational opportunities and more people involved. So opportunity is what we are missing. They've stripped those programs away. It is completely just dead. I mean, you still have the things like After School Matters, but that's very limited and selective in a city where you have over 94% of black males between the ages of 16 to 24 who are unemployed. When you have when you have young men and women who aren't going and graduating from high school. So what else are they doing, right? They're in the streets. They're selling drugs. And there is no, gang culture the way we knew it, where there were actually code. There was a street code here. And that has, that went away when a lot of the gang leadership was locked up under RICO laws. So when the leadership fell, then you have straight anarchy and people kind of making their own little, offshoot versions of gangs and things like that, and it's no rules. And I mean, people, I think you and I talked about it, the violence here is very much like the violence there in New Orleans or anywhere else around the country. It is reactionary behavior for very small things, communication breakdowns, disagreements, small things. These are not major things or beats, like you said in our interview, that date back 20 years ago before a lot of these young people were even born. They're still fighting these same beats, right? We saw a lot of the projects here and the housing projects come down in Chicago, and then a lot of the people that were living in those housing projects, they were being placed in suburbs. Here we have a suburb called Rockford, and we saw Rockford do a complete turnaround, meaning here now you've taken them out of the city where they had some access to some level of resources, put them in a place like Rockford, which is a suburban area with barely anything there. And now Rockford, you may hear about Chicago, but Rockford, which is a suburb, actually has more killings than Chicago. And
Wow.
I think that, you won't hear about that. And I'll tell you why you won't hear about that, just to expand on what is happening here, and it's happening across the country with gentrification. So a lot of people may hear about places like Inglewood, right? That's a popular community that I'm sure you've heard a lot about in the news if you follow any of Chicago news and violence. They kept Inglewood out of their mouth every day. It was something going on in Inglewood, but here's the truth. Inglewood is not the most violent area of Chicago. Inglewood was one of those areas that they targeted for gentrification, and they had to create a narrative that made this community look as if it was blighted. And once you make this community look blighted, then you can move in with eminent domain laws. And now you can start taking people's property because, this place is in such distress. And this is the sort of thing that we see with this narrative that they're creating around violence here. But I'm willing to bet that the violence here is equal to what you see in New Orleans, what you see in New York, what you see out west. It's the same thing, and for the same reason. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But sister, and you own it. You're on it, and your analysis and what you shared is interesting. I didn't know that the violence in the 90s was double. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yep. So we thank you for what you shared regarding that, and that insight is very, very valuable, what you said, and I'm going to go and research the Rockford, Illinois stuff. And so now let's transition to something that you educated me about, because you told me about in one of the inbox messages you sent me about the Green Motorist book, which was published from 1934 to 1966. And as I mentioned to you, I had never heard of that. So 2 questions. How did you find out about the Green Motorist book? And can you educate our listeners on just what it is?
Absolutely. So the Negro Motorist Green Book, because, Negro was one of the many names like colored and African-American that was given to us. And at that time, I guess we were Negro. So the Negro Motorist Green Book, like you mentioned, was published between 1934 and 1966. I originally found out about this attending a play that was being put on by a group called Honey Pot Performers back in 2012. And in here, this play really addressed Black women and our battle economically and what that looked like. And then I learned from there about the Negro Motorist Green Book. And just to give people a little bit of history on that, again, it was published between 1934 and 1966 by a postal worker named Victor H. Green. And the reason that Green decided to do this is because during that time, from 1934 and onwards, you had a lot of Black folk that were migrating from the South to other parts of the country. And also you had the emergence of the automobile industry. So we were also just traveling in general with our families and friends just for fun. And unfortunately, during those times, you may end up in the wrong community, the wrong town. And those towns are usually known as sundown towns, because once the sun goes down, the lynchers come out. And your family could be in great danger. You're riding through to get somewhere else. You stop to get gas. That could be the end of your life right there. Just wrong place, wrong time. So he saw this and decided, hey, I'm going to put together this guide that will help African Americans identify, the places that were safe for you to shop, to safe for you to get gas, to eat, to play, etc., while you're on the road, so that you can stay safe. And after the first year, the publication, I think it started first, it just very similar to what I did with mine, started in a local area, so his local area, like the East Coast region, because he was from Jersey. And then after the first year, he went national, and the second year he went global. Because the demand was so high for this publication. And it went on again until 1966. And just like so many of the great things that we had built after the signing of the Civil Rights Act, or the implementation of the Civil Rights Act bill, we started letting a lot of our stuff go.
Wow.
We started leaving our lease. We started abandoning our businesses and working for other people. We started leaving HBCUs and going to, PWIs, or predominantly white institutions like a Harvard or a Yale. And so that was part of the integration process. So what, of course, happened after that is there was, quote unquote, not a need for a Green Book anymore, because now we have actually arrived.
Wow.
We've arrived in a place now where we're equal and everything is good, so we don't have to. Matter of fact, Victor H. Green had he wrote in one of his books, and it could have been the introduction in all of the publications, where he said, I'm looking forward towards a day in which we will not need the Green Book, where we won't need it. So in 1966, a couple years after he died, because I think his wife and children continued it, the publication lost its appeal. No one was subscribing or picking it up, so they closed it down. So that's what happened, or that's kind of the synopsis of the Green Book.
And, and as you were talking, it made me think about this, and it relates to Chicago, how when our brother, President Barack Obama, was elected, I began to start hearing talk from black people questioning the need, or do we still need some of these black civil rights organizations or black nationalist organizations? And I'm like, man, we have to be one of I was like, man, we're the only people that I know that we want to kick the ladder that helped to get us where we are, and we're still not on top of the roof, but we want to get rid of the thing that helped to put this person there. So that's something. But Mr. Green would be so happy to hear someone like yourself that is picking up from, like, really continuing the work that he is doing, that he started doing. So tell me and the listening audience about the Neo Green Book. We dropped off the Negro. It's Neo Green Book, right?
It's Neo, which means new.
No, not Negro. Not
Negro.
About Negro. We kicked that. It's Neo New Green Book. So talk
That's
about
right.
That.
Yes, so the Neo Green Book, which is patterned after the Negro Motorist Green Book, is I kicked off this publication last year here in Chicago, and I have been thinking about doing a version of it since I first learned about it in 2012. So it was just one of those things that I planted the seed, shelved it, and then it just seemed like the right time, of course, working with the LOC and preparing for these Black Friday events. And one of the things that you constantly hear is, I don't know where to go. Who's doing what? Where can I find it? So, of course, being a person who is already in this space and have a massive network, especially here in Chicago, what I did was I pulled from BIBA, the group that I mentioned earlier, our Facebook group. You can find that Bridge BIBA online, BEBA, where all of the businesses that had been reported by the individuals in this group, referrals, and just direct, almost like word of mouth. These individuals were contacted, and we compiled a guide, the Neo Green Book, of over 500 socially responsible Black-owned businesses, meaning that these are individuals, these are businesses that are reinvesting back into our community. And I think that that's really, really important, and it's something that's left out of the larger conversation. We can say to support Black, but I support Black, but I say support Black with those that are reinvesting back. You know what I mean? Because then we're just pretty much we're doing the same thing. If not, it's just it's just a Black person and not some Arab or Korean or white person. It's just your brother or sister that's stealing from you the same exact way as someone that's foreign. So we have to be really careful with that, and making sure that when we are supporting these businesses, that we are making sure that they they are reinvesting back into the community. So that was a big push. Now, I had pushback from people. They're like, why are you putting out a print publication? Can't you just do it online? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, there's a need, and I'm going to show you. So I created this publication, which is a 5.5 by 8.5 in size, very easy for you to carry right in your glove compartment, or for ladies, put in your purse, your backpack, wherever, and you can pull it out for a quick resource. I decided to do that because of A, the socially responsible, and B, a lot of our online directories can become outdated. No one is scrubbing them and making sure that the businesses are still open and thriving and all of that. We kind of find a business, put it up there, the business closed 3 months later, and it's still up there. So I feel like with the print publication, it gives you a fresh, these businesses are open. These are businesses that came through our network and through referrals, not just some random search. So we do a lot of work putting the information together for businesses that we should support. And during that Black Friday, that Black Friday all the way up until Kwanzaa, which is December 31st, we sold over 1,000 of the Neo Green books, and I had only printed 1,000, and I thought that was going to be too much. Yeah, we sold 1,000, but to date, without any marketing, right here in the local area, people are still buying it. We've sold a little bit over 5,000 print as well as digital. So this year we're putting out the second, or what I call the 2018 Neo Green book, and we've expanded on the original idea since it did so well in market the first time. What we have done is included not just Illinois, but 5 additional Midwest states and 6 states in the South, which includes New Orleans, or Louisiana, I should say, because New Orleans, that's where most of the businesses are, but we like to look at it by state because our people are fragmented. We're all over the place. Sometimes there's businesses that you don't even know exist 3 hours away that have something that's hard to find. I've seen that as well. So, but what I really love about this particular edition is that it not only has over 1,000 resources, businesses, organizations, institutions, but we also cover best practices, different models that are being worked across the country, like Farouk Hunter out of Atlanta, yourself out of New Orleans. I even spoke to Sar Ahmadiel bin Yahweh in Israel, talking about the Black Exodus. We're covering a lot around lost cities. So, in a nutshell, what you see this year is really the format of all of the future annual Green Books to come, because I want people to look at this kind of like a trade publication for the movement. And if you're familiar with a trade publication, you know that a trade publication keeps you up to date with all the newest technology, the newest leaders, and, things you should stay away from, best practices, resources, etc. So this publication is something to help us be very intentional, going back to our mission, be very intentional and focused on what we should be doing, who we should be supporting, and also adding some worksheets and tips in there to help you to do that.
Wow. And that is just so amazing, that the work that you're doing, and many people need to know about that, because still today there are some places where we need to be very careful where we travel and where we eat. Now, I was on social media. I see that there, I think it's in Atlanta, that something happened. A sister went to one of these, I'm not going to even say their name, but it was one of these established restaurants, and she said she was discriminated against. So I see people are talking about shut it down.
Boycotting.
Yeah, boycotting. And here in the city of New Orleans, there was a situation where this restaurant posted something about their dislike of these athletes kneeling during the national anthem, and then the people in the city, they said, it took the media on social media, say, don't go there, and the owner, who happens to be white has been on black radio stations, all on Facebook trying to apologize.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, just like you said, we have to begin to not be so reactive.
Exactly.
We gotta begin
Exactly.
So what do you think from your experience and what you see, what can help us make that shift where we can get from being so reactive to be proactive?
It's like anything else, right? Like I have people in Chicago, they call me the General, right? That's like a nickname that I've adopted because I'm very strategic in the way that I think, and I approach everything like a teacher as well as a student, right? And so I'm probably your first ever Build Black coach. Like we have lifestyle coaches, you know what I mean? We have business coaches. We have all kinds of coaches. Black people are out of practice with supporting each other, and we are reactionary, and we just don't know how to act. And that's part of our program, right? So we have to really get people back to the basics, and this is why I do a lot in the education space, meaning I'm in a space where I realized I got so far in the work, and I had to stop and say, wait a minute, we got to shift mindsets here. People can't even wrap their heads around things long enough, to really understand the why, So you could say, Big Mike can call Bank Black, right? And we'll have a rush of people go and put their monies in the bank without understanding truly why and what they have to do afterwards. See, because if you're going from Chase to here, for example, Seaway Bank, which is now gone, but they've received an infusion, millions of dollars from that Bank Black movement, right? And here's one of the Seaway Bank is historic for Chicago. It was our number one bank. It was opened up here in the 60s. It was was like one of the top black-owned banks in the country forever. And just earlier this year, they closed. And people are like, well, what happened? We put all our money. Well, what happens if you go from Chase to a Seaway and Seaway doesn't have the technology in place to sustain you? You have to understand the sacrifice. You understand? We have to go back to the basics. When our brothers and sisters boycotted in Montgomery with those buses, they went 13 months. They had to carpool. They walked. They rode bikes. They did whatever they needed to do, to get their message across. But it's what I tell people all the time is like, what are we asking for now at this point? Our elders may not have known then. They may not have put it two and two together. Now that we've tried this, what can we learn from these lessons? And, the only evidence, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad showed us this. We love to talk about Black Wall Street. We saw this. We saw this with Garvey. The only way is self-sufficiency. That's it. That's all. So we have to get people back into the basic understanding. And in the Green Book, there is a activity that I take people through. It's called Levels of Woke, right? Because people love to say that they woke. They love to say that they woke, or who ain't woke and who is woke. And this is important because I want people to understand what level they're at. And I argue that there are actually 5 levels of awakening before you actually get to a place of woke. And I make everything very Dr. Seuss, brother. Very Dr. Seuss. Very simple. Very simple, and even add a tinge of humor because that's what our people respond to. That's what they respond to. So I've taken, for me, I think it's going to require patience. And the reason I put this whole levels of woke together so that when you are speaking to someone and you're at a level 7, maybe, and you're talking to somebody who's at a level 2, let's be patient with this person. They're only in 2nd grade with their understanding, with their mentality. So I'm going to deal with them a little bit differently than I would somebody who's at the same level as me and should have a certain understanding. So we have to be patient with each other. We have to be kind with one another. We have to be willing to sacrifice. And I'm talking about more than a couple weeks on a movement. We have to stop being so reactionary. So we have to approach this thing the same way we would any other lifestyle change. Because for us in our collective, this is not a boycott. This is not a protest. This is a lifestyle. You know, if you want to lose weight, what do? You don't go on a diet. You switch what it is that you eat. You switch what time you wake up. You put an exercise routine in place. You do things. That is the mentality or the action steps that we're going to have to take to start shifting people. It's a shift of mindset, for real.
Wow. And that's powerful, sister. And we are coming to the conclusion of this interview. Can you share with the listeners, one, how they can actually get a copy of the Neo Green book, two, how they can reach you via social media, and any other information you want them to know as we get ready to close out in the next minute?
Okay, so you can reach me at www.bridge, BRIJ, Embassy, EMB as in boy, ASSY.com. That is our website. You can call me at 773-517-7212, or you can email me at the Neo, Neo, Green, GREEN, book, BOOK at gmail.com. I'd love to come down and visit New Orleans.
Yeah, we're going to have to see about that. And we thank you, sister, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and share all that you shared. And this interview was extremely informative. And you touched on so many topics and principles and points that are relevant here to the city of New Orleans. And whatever I can do to connect you with other people who also have that same passion, that same drive in this area of the liberation of our people, I definitely will. So we thank you, Sister Shabazz, for taking the time out. And for our listeners, we thank you all for tuning in to Classes in Session. And I'll just close again, inviting everybody out to come in here at the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on October the 15th, 2017 at 4201 Dowman Road, and that is at 1 p.m. So thank you, sister, and may God continue to bless you and your family.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Peace. Peace.